Folks, I don't know if you noticed, but it's snowing. And hopefully you did. Hopefully you caught that. Hopefully you noticed and saw and observed that it is in fact snowing out there this morning. And that's business as usual. One thing I learned living in Saskatchewan is that when you think you're done, you're not done. You still got a ways to go. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is when you think one season is over, there's always like a return to that season, kind of out of nowhere. And it happens every time, even when you think it isn't going to. It's really, really regular. The most common one that we think of is summertime. Because summertime, you think about being, well, if you're in this part of the world, July, August, that kind of thing. But then, like all of a sudden in Saskatchewan, and we're kind of known for this, all of a sudden in late August, early September, it'll start to get cold, the nights will get longer, the days will get shorter. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, boom, like mid-September, it gets like really nice, like beach weather nice, out of nowhere. All of a sudden that just happens, and your season that you thought was over gets another shot at it. It's another go around. Now, this happens with every season, and right now it is doing that in the winter. This is the second winter that you get. We had fake spring last couple of days. Fake spring. You thought it was spring, didn't you? You did, I did, woo, dogs did. We all thought it was spring. It's not spring. Even though we know what's going to happen, we're still surprised when it does. That's a function of human experience. That even when things are predictable, somehow we're confused by them. How could that have happened? I was pretty sure it was spring this time. This time I thought for real it was going to be the real deal. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it wasn't. Yeah. That's how it happens. That's how it goes. And like, folks, I love us. I do. I respect and appreciate us a great deal, but this is a problem that we're always falling into. We're always getting trapped on this same issue. Not unlike the same things every time, but the predictability of something seems to surprise us. Where we say, well, wait a minute. How could the exact same thing happen again? Well, of course it was going to happen again. That's how the world is. Well, one of the ones that I default to frequently as a preacher of the gospel, like as a studier of God's word and whatnot, one of the things I default to the most frequently is the one that talks about human sinfulness, right? People individually are corrupt, and therefore as a group they are corrupt. They are not better as a group than they are as individuals. They're the same. And people are surprised every time when that bill comes due, when that item comes home to roost, that kind of thing. They're always surprised. They're saying, well, wait a minute, how could this happen? How could it happen that the people we trusted let us down? How could it happen that the people that we held up as being like good and upstanding people, how could it be the case that they're kind of not so great? Well, what did you think was going to happen? No, seriously, what did you think was going to happen? Did you think that in some way you were going to have an experience in which people were good this time? Did you think that you were going to have an experience in which people were right and good and proper and on the up and up? Why are you confused? Why are you surprised? You shouldn't be confused. You shouldn't be surprised. These things shouldn't be a mystery every time they happen. And you'd think with the frequency of them happening over and over and over again, you'd think with that level of frequency that there in some way we would clue in and say, well, maybe when it says there's none righteous, no, not one, that might actually be a real thing. That might actually be an essential component of human nature that shouldn't surprise us. The gospel reading that we had on Sunday, last Sunday, where Jesus cleans out the temple, everybody knows that story, but keep listening for another couple of verses. Because after Jesus overturns all the tables in the temple and scatters the coins and throws out those who are selling animals and whatnot and says, "You will not turn my Father's house into a house of trade," after he says that, then it goes on a little bit after that, but it talks about him and human beings, and it says he did not need anybody to tell him what human beings were like, because he himself knew what was in men. And that's a great distillation of things. He knows what we're all about, which is why he comes to save us. If he had the impression that we were able to in some way pull ourselves out of this mess through like sheer force of will or desire or good behavior or whatever, if he believed that or knew that that was the case, he'd probably do that instead. He'd probably say, well, here's a simple, straightforward, step-by-step guide on how to behave, so just do it already. Then we would, and then we wouldn't have any problems. But he knows what's in men. And he knows that every time we do the same thing. He knows that we're predictable as clockwork and regular as the tides. This is how we work and how we operate. Fine and good. But you got to understand that with that being the case, with that being 100% the case, he's not surprised. We shouldn't be surprised either. Like, in the same way that you're always going to get your second winter, your last little bit of snowfall. If you thought you were done, you put your shovels away, you got your your sun hat out, you thought to yourself, great, it's spring, time to... No, it's not. You know it's not. Even if it seems like it, you know it's not. Like, you're smarter than that. I know you are. In the same way, you're smarter than this. When you see somebody, and like when you pin all your hopes on somebody who is nice and good and kind and respectable, you're smarter than this. You know better than that. And the reason you know better than that is you don't trust your senses on this. You trust the living God. You trust the living God who tells you quite perfectly and quite happily, this is what people are all about. This is what they do. This is how they behave. This is how they operate. Their lives are exactly that, and God is smart enough to know that and to let you know that. Now, knowing the predictability of something should give you an awful lot of ammunition for sorting out that it happens and why it happens. The predictable nature of human behavior should be likewise. Not that you can't love people, not that you can't embrace them and hold fast to them, but don't forget who they are. And in addition to that, don't forget who you are. And knowing who you are helps to explain who the rest of us are. Thanks for joining me today. I'll catch you guys next time.